However, I do consider myself an expert on safety and relative risk. And here, I've got to say, something is off to me. And I know I'm in a minority opinion on that here, where Congressman talked about the real and constant threat. I did a show years ago based on my experience as a consumer reporter called Scaring Ourselves to Death. And I think the Homeland Security state is scaring America to death. And yes, there is a real and constant threat, but how big is it? The Department of Homeland Security proudly was invented after 9/11 to oversee 22 existing previous agencies. They more than doubled spending. Are they more efficient? I doubt it. Pete Hegsworth earlier talked about reforming the bloated bureaucracy. I think that's like teaching a cat to bark. It can't be done. When it's this big, it will be awful. The Pentagon does have a 26-page brownie recipe, as an example. But as a consumer reporter, my specialty was relative risk. And what brought this home to me was that 20 years ago, when a producer came in with a story from the trial lawyers, like most of these risk stories come from, we got to do a story on big lighters. They're exploding in people's pockets, and spontaneously setting people on fire. And this was true. They killed 4 people over the past 4 years, many more have been mortally burned. But I had gotten sick of taking stories from the trial lawyers. I'd woken up to their scam by then, and I had a list of what kills people in America on the wall, and I could point to that and say, okay, I'll do big lighters, but let's do plastic bags first, because they kill 40 Americans every 4 years. Or bathtubs, they kill 800 Americans every 4 years. It's a big country. If we scare people about the ants, they won't pay attention when the elephants come. He called me callous, and they did get somebody else to do that story. But when I now look at the 9/11 threat, war is the friend of the state. Crisis is the friend of the state. In the economic field, we had a credit crunch. People in power said we would have economic collapse if we don't bail out the banks, if we don't let a few men spend $1 trillion of your money. Crisis grows the state. That's an enemy of freedom. 3,000 people died on September 11th, more than that. It's been 12 years. Let's assume it happened every 10 years, 300 deaths a year. That would be horrible in America. But we live with risk. 35,000 deaths on the highway, 100 deaths today, odds are. 3,000 Americans die in house fires. A $10 smoke detector is a wonderful thing. It's a place to spend money. 1,000 Americans drown. And the media gets it wrong. The media warns you about sharks. You gotta worry about drowning. 100 Americans are killed every year hitting deer. Where does terrorism fit into this? Almost nothing's happened in 12 years. It may happen. I don't presume to know. The rest of the panel is much more informed about this than I. But over my career, I've just looked at scare after scare that's led to the growth of government and limits on freedom. Certainly economic freedom is massive amounts of money is sucked for the war against lawn chemicals, danger in the grass, which will feature on 2020. Cell phone radiation causing brain tumors. Remember that scare? We forget these scares a week later. The terrorism scare stays with us. The cancer epidemic, food additives, pesticides. We banned DDT, which has killed millions of people around the world, because DDT is a wonderful insecticide that stops malaria and hurts no one. It was a lie what Silent Spring claimed about it. Now we're told plastic bottles are killing children. That global warming, says the left, is the biggest threat to America, bigger than terrorism, bigger than the country going bankrupt. Kids are not allowed to play alone anymore because the media hype the risk of kidnapping, which almost never happens, stranger kidnappings. Plane crashes. The plane crash is hyped by the media, and you'd say it has to be if a plane doesn't crash. You could say that's the amazing miracle we should cover, that thousands of planes take off and land next to each other and don't crash. But when the plane crashes, we go crazy saying, we're here at the scene, Live, we don't know anything, but we'll keep telling you what we don't know live for hours. They used to try to get me to do stories on the 10 most dangerous airports or the least safe airlines, and I would refuse because that's statistical murder, in my opinion. Because when we do that reporting, more people drive to Grandma's house, and that kills people. Relative risk ought to be paid attention to, and I think we have deeply lost that in the Homeland Security state. One good example is the TSA. Now, before the TSA was created, we did have these private contractors who were paying people minimum wage, letting people on the airplanes. They obeyed all the government's rules. The small knives were legal under the FAA's rules. The unlocked cockpit doors, they were legal. But after 9/11, Congress said, this isn't good enough, we have to have this run by government. Tom Daschle said, you can't professionalize if you don't federalize. And that made sense to me. It made sense to me at the time. We were scared. When you're scared, it's hard to make good judgments. So now it's 12 years later, we have the TSA. How's that working out for us? So we've all had problems with it, but you could say maybe it's a necessary thing to go through for safety. We volunteer to fly. We should expect some discomfort. It's just part of the trip. Except the law did allow some cities to opt out, and San Francisco did. It was the only big city to do that. So recently I sent a producer to San Francisco to talk to passengers. What's it like going through this privatized airport security? And they said, it was weird. The screeners, they're friendlier. And it was faster. And the TSA tests them now and then, and they try to smuggle in fake pipe bombs and so forth. And they caught them in 75% of the cases in San Francisco. In Los Angeles, they found them in 25% of the cases. So the private screeners are friendlier and faster and better at their jobs. Now, why is that? Well, it's because it's private. It's the way it's done in Israel. Government support, private contractors competing. You can fire the contractor, can't fire the government. And the contractor knows if he does a good job, he may get hired by other airports and get rich selfishly. So he does things like give workers a day off where he has contests. Who can search the luggage and repack it fastest? They play music, they give out awards. They're better. So other airports hear about this. They want to opt out. The one up by Glacier National Park in Montana, where the TSA is in charge, and people don't want to go to Glacier National Park in the winter. They want to go in the summer. But government being government, TSA maintains staffing levels equally all year round. So in winter, the TSA stands for its initials, thousands standing around. And in summer, there are long waits, and some people miss their planes. So the airport manager tries to opt out. And the law says if you ask the Department of Homeland Security, you can opt out. Homeland Security, 12 other airports asked. Homeland Security sits on these for over a year, and then finally says, no, we don't think this is advantageous to the federal government. Wouldn't Burger King like to say that to McDonald's? My point is, the bureaucracy grows. You can't teach it to be efficient. The growth of the Homeland Security state is a great threat to our economic future and our freedom. Terrorism may be a threat, but it is one of many, and we should keep it in perspective. Thank you.